We're in a new meta, guys. And with that new meta, we have to figure out what ground are we standing on? What deck is the best deck? Let's just talk about it, shall we? YG, baby.
So in leading off this video, guys, I wanted to talk about some of the most powerful established decks, whether that be Drytron, TRI-BRIGADE, Prankid, Shaddoll Invoked, and Sky Striker. I feel like you could argue for Salamangreat Great, but it kind of remains to be seen just because there isn't enough info. But this past couple of tournaments that happened over the weekend, one the PPG and two the other one that happened in Australia, you can zoom forward a little bit in the video to kind of catch what happened in Australia and the land down under. But as far as this deck list, I really think it was interesting. They went the Megalith full route, not to go into a Bathor, but for the simple fact of extending a little bit more into the Ben 10 and then grabbing more fairies in the early hand in the early game. I guess it's kind of an interesting take on the deck, and it definitely did well, which there hasn't been quite as many Drytrons as you'd expect. Moving into the next list, I think the Shaddoll Invoked has a clear argument for being the best decked. Obviously, this one has a little bit of the Dogmatica stuff and the Eldritch as the random target, which I think is actually an intelligent choice inside of Shaddolls for the simple fact that you can actually summon a card like Eldritch in the deck very, very easily with the amount of spells and traps that you play. Now we got to talk about some of the old reliables. There are so many decks that I felt like it would be stupid and really irresponsible on my part to even try to do a top 5 or top 10 decks of the meta. I've already kind of said what the best decks are, but as far as the decks that you should expect to see when you're going into a major event, Plunder Patrol, Orcus, Unchained, Mystic Mine, I know. Even just dealing with Mystic Mine is irritating. It's irritating for me to say it. But Altergeist, I expect to see Engage, Grand Maju, Dino, Virtual World, Phantom Knight, Hero, Pendulum, Dragonlink, Eldritch, Adamancipator, Guru, and Mekk-Knight. So that's a lot of decks. What I mean by the Engage part is Engage and Hornet Drones is most definitely going to be a thing. I can see it in the deck, specifically like Orcus. As far as over here in America, in the PPG event that happened down in Florida, Virtual World actually ended up winning, and he's a good friend of a close teammate of mine. And this list is very, very well thought out, very, very intelligently built, and it really has a solid grind game against a deck like Sky Striker. So it's a good meta call if you expect to see Sky Striker a lot. Speaking of Sky Striker, the person that got second actually lost out to that winning deck list, and I really like this Go First version, which really revolves around using Solemn Judgment and a lot of hand traps and being able to set up. This other list that also got in the top 4 of that same event, I believe it was 128 players, also had a different approach in the fact that it's going second and it's trying to walk through a board. And a card like Mind Control, a card like Pankratops, being able to deal with an Appaloosa is just a really, really interesting tech choice and deck choice. As far as Mystic Mind, this is why I had to mention Mystic Mind, because yes, people are still playing it. They didn't hit it, so therefore it's still going to be a problem. I really like this list actually just because it's hilarious, and then it's stuff like Amano Awato in the side, as well as the Curse Seal to be able to remove your opponent from being able to get some of these cards off the field. Is just a tremendous pain in the butt, and then shout out to Prohibition. As far as some of the other deck lists that were a little bit farther down, Adamancipator actually showed up a little bit, which is also very, very interesting, but I just have no idea what the deck's even trying to do anymore. But with stuff like Doki Doki in the format, in the repertoire of that deck, I just don't see it ever resolving, so I can understand why they cut it down to 1. As far as some of the other decks, Unchained has a solid Eldritch matchup and can really do well against decks that need to grind, and Unchained is the type of deck that can keep coming repeatedly. So that kind of pretty much boils down to that. As far as the other lists, you got the Dino lists that are still trying to kind of find their way without 3 Misk. You know, we did read Misk and now it's at 1, so there's that. I think that Lithosagem or Lithosagem, however the hell you say it, as far as being some of the cards that people are choosing to replace the Mist, it's just really, really interesting as well. Some of these other lists, I don't necessarily agree with one Jack Jaguar, as I had a conversation with a friend. But as far as this list is gas, and this player that plays Salamangreat Great, I've seen his name so many times playing this deck that he pretty much had all of the solid deck theory that he had going into this event. And highly recommend looking for his deck profile somewhere online. I actually didn't attend it at all, so I didn't get any of them. it kind of is what it is. But as far as some of the other decks that you don't expect to see, this is kind of a local, so, take it for what it is at face value. But stuff like Orcus, being able to continue to be able to play mixed with stuff like Dragon Link inside of the deck, still have the Danger package doing relatively well, still have some of the Phantom Knights being slipped into decks like this to be able to facilitate high impact plays and then high ceiling plays as far as being able to keep going and keep creating established boards, like putting something behind a board of that magnitude like Fogblade behind an Orcus board is just flat out silly. I didn't see much Altergeist, but as far as getting into Australia and another portion of the world, we have some interesting deck lists definitely coming from these big tournaments that they had. Shout out to the Wolf Grounds tournaments that they have down there. It's one of their big events. I guess it's like their PPG. But again, you see Dino showing up again. People are taking the route of either playing Droplets or Lightning Storm, or still kind of sticking with the Scrap Raptor stuff. The other deck list actually didn't have any of the Scrap stuff. At least I don't believe so. But as far as this list revolves around that. And I feel like this person is just getting that last little fun out of the way, as this was the last format, the last event of that format. And I really feel like, yeah, there was strong choice for then, but now it's about where do you adjust? Where do you go from here? The Drytron list, this one particularly focused on being able to use Dragoon if your plays get stopped, and took out a lot of the hand traps. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but hey, they did well in a big event. So it's definitely something to think about. I do see evenly matched in more and more deck lists, which I called in my deck profile, my Drytron deck profile. Make sure you go check that out. It's also on the page. But then we also have some extremely interesting lists where people have decided to hell with going to 40 cards. They want to play all the cards that they want to play. And this list specifically focuses on Torrential Tribute and the Artifact Scythe on the side that you can pop, because it's kind of like a scythe loop, very similar to how Demise Striker used to do back in the day. This deck completely focuses on torrentialing your opponent and then being able to save your own cards, which is really, really superb in my opinion, because Torrential Tribute has always been in this superb card. As far as all of these other lists, this one is interesting for the simple fact that it's 60 cards and there's just so much going on that you're never going to, in my opinion, brick, because you're never really going to draw the Shaddolls like that. And if you do, then you're just unlucky. I think 60 card lists make a lot of sense. And shout out to Yuri Diaz. He's on the team and he's done that so many times that I completely understand the theory behind that. And what got first place in this tournament was Sky Striker Eldritch, which is a definitely real and authentic version of the deck, as well as True Draco, which we will have coming to the page extraordinarily soon. So to make a long story short and a short story long, guys, I feel that the top 5 decks as we know them, and again, if you absolutely have to, I would definitely say Sky Striker probably would be number 5 in my personal opinion, followed by Prank Kids, which I feel is just a nightmare of a matchup because it just doesn't lose outright to a specific hand trap. And then rounding out the rest of it, I think the Dolls, Drytron, and TRI-BRIGADE are the top 3 decks. But with Sky Striker doing so well so early, maybe it's people have forgotten how to play against it. Maybe it's just that good. You never know. But with Engage and a powerful card like that, which is basically Batman's utility belt, you never know. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. This is just a quick little rundown of a lot of different lists and a new meta. I thought rather than do a new meta thing and me guess and prognosticate, I'd rather show you actual event happenings and then go from there. Appreciate you for tuning in. I'm out. YG baby, Pegasus is out of here. Make sure you stay tuned for more content. Sayonara.